Game Freak has dabbled with a fair few non-Pokemon ventures over its 30-plus year history. For the most part, these ventures have been pretty good, with games like Harmonite and Drill Dozer quickly coming to mind. Less than a month before the release of Pokemon Sword and Shield, Game Freak has released its latest non-Pokemon game, Little Town Hero. But is Little Town Hero worth its $25 price tag? Let's find out. But first, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Thanks. This review and the related footage is based on a digital retail copy of the game for the Nintendo Switch. Little Town Hero follows the story of a red-headed boy named Axe who can be renamed by the player. Axe lives in a small town that is cut off from the rest of the world. The only way in or out of the town is through the castle. Axe wants to become a soldier so he can access the castle and see the outside world. After Axe finds a mysterious red stone in the mines, monsters begin appearing all around town, and it's up to Axe and the gang to defeat the monsters. The story is pretty run-of-the-mill, with no real nuance or subtext. That's not to say the story is bad, though. The intrigue surrounding the monsters and the way that everything comes together towards the end of the 20 or so hour long campaign is at least entertaining. At times, the story can even be pretty compelling. I found the characters to be exceedingly likable, and the interactions between characters were my favorite parts of the story by and large. In the end, the narrative does a good job of motivating your actions. To say it does anything more, though, would be generous. Much in the same vein, the soundtrack is pretty good, albeit generic. Composed primarily by Undertale creator Toby Fox, the score has its high marks here and there, but it's pretty mild as a whole. Don't dive in expecting anything like Megalovania or Hopes and Dreams. There's nothing really to complain about with the soundtrack. I like most of the music well enough, and the score adds a lot to the charm seen in the story. Speaking of charm, I find the graphics to be very endearing. I especially like Little Town Hero's character designs. If you've ever played Pokemon, or even just seen designs from Pokemon, you know what to expect. Main character models have very thematic looks, with bold, definite color choices and details. By comparison, NPC models are pretty basic, but they still look good. There are a lot of duplicated NPC models across the entire town, but it's not flagrant enough to be problematic. While it's nothing overly impressive, the game is really nice looking in both docked and handheld mode. Since everything looks pretty simplistic, there aren't a lot of cut corners when transitioning to the tablet screen. The concessions made with the resolution are very minor. The frame rate, on the other hand, has some intermittent jitteriness. Little Town Hero runs mostly fine, but it has some occasional hiccups. When docked, the stutters were very sporadic, usually appearing when transitioning between scenes. It's nothing game-breaking, but it bears mentioning. The frame rate issues became a bit more noticeable in handheld mode, but again, it's nothing game-breaking. Overall, I'd say Little Town Hero's graphics are one of the high points of the game. What will make or break the game for you is the gameplay. Little Town Hero purports to be a turn-based RPG about a boy who must defend his mysteriously isolated town from increasingly dangerous monsters. At face value, it certainly looks like an RPG. The presence of side quests, the pseudo-free-roaming exploration, even the way the combat is visually presented all makes it seem like a turn-based RPG. The problem with that is that Little Town Hero isn't actually an RPG. The game doesn't have a leveling system like a traditional RPG. You don't really increase your stats like an RPG either. And the combat's not even really turn-based. Enemies attack you at the same time that you attack them. When you really dissect Little Town Hero, it's more of a card game RPG like Dragon Ball Z Legendary Super Warriors on the Game Boy Color. First, let's take a look at the part of the game that is vaguely akin to a JRPG. In lieu of traditional leveling up, there's a skill tree. However, most of the upgrades focus on improving the cards in your deck rather than improving yourself. Character upgrades pretty much begin and end with improving your overshield. Everything else is about improving the attacks at your disposal. To obtain an upgrade, you have to use Eureka points, and Eureka points are earned by winning battles and finishing side quests. This is pretty much where the RPG similarities end. Now let's take a look at combat. I'll try to simplify combat mechanics as much as possible. As mentioned, Little Town Hero's battles are essentially a card game. Your headspace is your deck of cards. Izzets are the cards you draw, and they come in 3 flavors. Red cards can attack once per turn, yellow cards are for defense, and blue cards are instant effect cards. Some red and yellow cards also have bonus effects. Cards must be activated before use, which turns them into Dazzets. To activate cards, you use Power Gems, which are like mana from Magic the Gathering. Each card has an activation cost, which is the large central number, and the longer you play, the larger your reserve of Power Gems grows, up to a maximum of 6 gems. The top number on each card is how much damage the card will deal out, and the bottom number is how much damage the card can take before being broken. Broken cards are discarded from play, and breaking all the opponent's cards in a single turn will cause an all break, which makes the opponent vulnerable to damage. If you cannot attack during all break, you'll earn 1 break point or BP. BP is used to restore broken cards or swap cards in your hand and deck. If you have an unused active red card in your hand during all break, then you'll use it to deal direct damage, which depletes the opponent's hearts. Empty all the opponent's hearts and you win. Alongside the card game combat, bigger battles have some added mechanics compared to smaller battles. First, the aforementioned Overshield is called Guts, and the Guts mechanic is used only in these larger confrontations. You'll have to break through the Guts barrier before you can deal or receive direct damage. These grander battles also take place on a pseudo board game map. Most board spaces are empty and mean nothing, but there are some special spaces scattered about. Ally spaces allow a supporting character to perform a unique assist move once per battle. Gimmicks are environmental objects with varying effects and are activated by using a specific card on them. And spaces with exclamation points do miscellaneous things like add special cards to your deck or allow you to combine 2 cards into 1 super card with the benefits of both. Herein lies my problem with the core gameplay. I think the card game combat is really slow. Little Town Hero's battle mechanics aren't bad by any means, but it's severely limited by the size of the power pool. You start with only 3 gems, and you max out at only 6 gems. Yes, your power pool grows as the battle progresses, but it takes 3 turns for the pool to increase by an increment of 1. To reach the maximum reserve size of 6 gems, you need to play through 9 turns. This makes simple battles longer than necessary, and difficult battles near interminable. There are also puzzle battles which require you to play your cards in a specific way to accomplish a special win condition. These are the only battles that don't feel protracted. Instead, they feel restrictive. There's definitely something to the core combat. There are probably a decent number of people out there who will enjoy this battle system. It's just not for me. Personally, I think it takes far too long for battles to develop, and most of my time spent with the game was spent playing these overly long confrontations. I think if the power pool was a bit larger, or if the pool size grew every 2 turns instead of 3, the pacing of both the combat and the game as a whole would be markedly improved. As it stands, however, I'm just not a fan. Little Town Hero is very endearing. The art style, the music, the character designs, they all work together to make sure the game's charm is boiling over. At face value, it's a very appealing game, especially for only $25. My problem with Little Town Hero is that it's not the game it claims to be. It has more in common with Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Than it does with an RPG game. There's nothing wrong with card game RPGs at large. I've played a fair few of them myself, like the Pokemon trading card game on Game Boy Color and Yu-Gi-Oh! Reshef of Destruction on Game Boy Advance. But Little Town Hero's card game combat mechanics are needlessly slow. This makes the game and its pacing either frustrating or tedious or at times outright boring. Again, how you feel about Little Town Hero ultimately depends on how you feel about the combat. There are likely a good number of people that will find Little Town Hero to be pretty fun. Sadly, I'm not one of them. Little Town Hero earns a 5 out of 10. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell icon, and share this video with your friends. Thanks.